Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into the Subclass 173 visa, which you might know as the Contributory Parent Visa. This is a really popular way for people to bring their parents to Australia, so we're going to break down the official government guidelines to figure out exactly who qualifies. So, if you're an Australian citizen or a permanent resident and you're dreaming of having your parents join you here, then this is definitely for you. We're going to walk through all the main eligibility gates for the Subclass 173 visa using the official info to help you see if this is the right move for your family. Okay, first things first. Before we get into all the nitty-gritty requirements, it's super important to understand what this visa is actually for and, what it's not for. At its heart, the 173 is a temporary visa. It lets your parents live in Australia for up to 2 years. Now, that word contributory in the name is really, really key. What it means is that this visa has a much higher application fee than other parent visas. So what's the trade-off? Well, the government processes these applications way, way faster. Think of it as a temporary visa that's really a stepping stone to the permanent version, the Subclass 143. And right off the bat, here's a critical detail you've got to know. There's another visa out there, the Subclass 870. And the government is crystal clear on this. You can't have both. If you've already put in an application for, or if you're already holding, a sponsored parent temporary visa, then the 173 is off the table for you. They're two totally different paths. All right, let's get into the actual process. We're going to look at this whole application like a series of gates you need to pass through. And gate number 1 is the absolute foundation of everything. Every single applicant needs to have an approved sponsor. And let me just be perfectly clear on this because it's that important. This is an absolute, non-negotiable requirement. The official rules say every single applicant has to be sponsored, and that sponsorship needs to be formally approved. Without it, the application is basically a non-starter. It just won't get off the ground. So who can this sponsor be? Well, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the applicant's child. Now, to be an eligible child, you've got to be an Australian citizen, a permanent resident, or an eligible New Zealand citizen who is considered settled. That's just the government's way of saying you've been living in Australia lawfully for a reasonable amount of time, usually about 2 years. If your child happens to be under 18, then another eligible relative or even an approved community organization can step in and sponsor. Okay, moving on to gate number 2. And honestly, this is often the part that confuses people the most. It's called the balance of family test. It sounds a little intimidating, doesn't it? But don't worry, the logic behind it is pretty straightforward once we break it down. So, what is this test all about? Well, it's basically the government's way of measuring how strong an applicant's ties are to Australia. It's really just a numbers game to make sure that the parent's connection to Australia is at least as strong as their connection to any other single country out there. The main rule is this. You pass the test if you can show that at least half of your children are eligible children living permanently in Australia. And hey, if you have an equal number of kids in Australia compared to other countries, that counts too. You still meet the test. It's all about hitting that 50% mark. And this table here makes it so easy to understand. Let's just walk through it. Look at the first row. You have 4 kids. 2 of them are in Australia. That's exactly half, so boom, you pass. But in the second case, you have 3 kids and only 1 is in Australia. That's only a third, which is less than half, so that's a fail. Now, the third example is interesting because it shows another way to pass. If you have more eligible kids living in Australia than in any other single country, you also pass. So 3 out of 5 kids in Australia, that's a definite pass. Okay, so you've cleared the sponsorship gate and you've passed the family balance test. So what's next? Well, the focus now shifts over to the applicant's personal background. This brings us to gate number 3, meeting Australia's national standards for health and character. This is a standard but very serious part of any visa application. Applicants have to meet the health requirement, which usually means going for a medical exam. They also have to pass the character requirement, which means getting police clearances. And on top of all that, you can't owe any money to the Australian government, and if you have a history of visas being canceled or refused, that could definitely make things more complicated. And here's a really crucial point, one that's super easy to miss. These checks aren't always just for the person applying for the visa. In some cases, the government can actually require family members who are not coming with you to Australia to meet the health and character requirements too. It's a small detail, but a really important one. And here we are. We've arrived at gate number 4, the final gate. This one isn't about money or family trees. It's all about values and showing your commitment to the Australian way of life. Now, there is a special rule for any applicants who are under 18. The government is very, very clear that a visa will not be granted if it's decided that it's not in the best interests of the child. That's always the #1 priority in those specific situations. For every applicant who's 18 or older, this is the last formal step. You'll have to confirm that you read or someone has explained to you the Life in Australia booklet. Then you have to sign the Australian Values Statement. This quote you see on the screen, that's the core of the promise. It's a personal commitment to respect Australian society and to obey its laws. So there you have it. Those are the 4 main eligibility gates for the Subclass 173 visa, straight from the official requirements. It's a journey that requires a settled sponsor, passing that family balance test, meeting all the personal health and character checks, and finally, making a commitment to Australian values. Now that you've seen the path laid out, the only real question left is your family ready to begin?